So most of you will be aware by now that Barnaby Joyce has gotten himself in a bit of trouble. Now I really hesitated about whether or not I was going to do a video about this, because it's really easy when Christians see a public figure, especially one who's a practicing believer. Barnaby Joyce is a practicing Catholic. It's really easy for Christians to jump on people like this and condemn them and drive them into the ground. It's really easy to do this. And I'm not putting out this video to achieve that. It's obvious that Barnaby Joyce has sinned. It's obvious that he's committed adultery, he's damaged his family, he's estranged himself from his wife, he's hurt his daughters, and he's knocked up one of his staffers. So this is a messy situation, and he is already starting to reap the whirlwind. I don't intend to add to that whirlwind, but I just think we should learn some lessons from this. And particularly the church. There's things that we need to learn from this. So, last year, I know there were a lot of Christians who were thinking, how on earth could we get to a situation where our culture, over 60% of our culture, of our country, voted in favor of same-sex marriage? This is why. Because those who debate and argued for traditional marriage, those who were the main proponents of traditional marriage across not just the last few years, but even decades, you could even go back further, have been trashing the institution themselves. I've been following the comment sections on a lot of this discussion about Barnaby Joyce on Facebook, and there's a theme which keeps coming up over and over and over again. Most Australians don't really give a rat's that Barnaby Joyce has done this. They don't really care that Barnaby Joyce has committed adultery. A lot of people's response is, oh yeah, a lot of marriages fall apart, he's brought this on himself, it's none of our business, yada yada yada. So a lot of citizens have that perspective. But another perspective which is coming through, and some of these same people are saying, yeah, but he spent late last year for months condemning people and trying to keep people from having what they would consider their right to marry, from stopping same-sex marriage because of his belief in traditional marriage, while at the same time he was cheating on his wife with his staffer. What a hypocrite. That's what I see consistently coming through online. There are people like, yeah, we don't really have a problem that he did this, because at the end of the day, most people don't care about other people's sexual activities in the Western world today. We've as a culture, we no longer really have many sexual standards. But alongside of that, they say, yeah, but he's a hypocrite, because, oh, Mr. Traditional Marriage doesn't care about marriage at all. And this is why we lost the debate. Brothers and sisters, Christians out there, this is why we lost the debate. This is why our society has devalued marriage to the point that we have. Because for decades, public figures who are Christians, a lot of time non-Christians, but also Christians, have been cheating on their wives or cheating on their husbands and replacing them with younger, updated models, and basically trashing the institution of marriage. How can we expect a society which sees so many prominent people disrespect the institution of marriage between a man and a wife? How can we expect people who see this disrespect over and over again to want to uphold that tradition? I put forth to you that the reason why we lost that debate is because of situations like this. Obviously Barnaby Joyce has come out after this, but there are so many other examples prior to this of famous people, even famous Christians, doing the wrong thing by their wives or the wrong thing by their husbands. How many megachurch pastors do you know have been married multiple times? There are countless different examples of this. And it's just sad. How can on the one side people be arguing to defend traditional marriage, but in their own lives they're cheating on their spouse? So I think this is really illustrative, because Barnaby Joyce is a practicing Catholic. And like as a Protestant we have differences of opinion about how salvation works and how the church is structured and all these sort of things, obviously. But at the end of the day, Catholics and Protestants, whether Baptist or Anglican or Presbyterian, whatever, all agree that the Bible teaches Marriage is a sacred union between a man and his wife. But how can we convince people that it's sacred if we don't treat it as sacred ourselves? How can we convince people that marriage matters if we're willing to trash our marriages behind the scenes while telling other people they need to live according to our standard? One of the things that Jesus was frustrated about with the Pharisees in the New Testament is how hypocritical they were. How hypocritical they were because they couldn't live up to their own standards. And we are falling far short. Now, the truth is that the gospel recognizes this. The reason Jesus died on the cross for our sins is because we are imperfect and we will fall short, and Christians make mistakes, even prominent ones. And you could say theirs are particularly under scrutiny because they are in the limelight. And I don't envy anyone who is under such scrutiny or who is so prominent in society. But this situation is illustrative in other ways. For example, why should adultery be avoided? One of the interesting things that we've seen in this situation is that there was this whole revelation that the media knew about this for some time, and they managed to keep it quiet. And the reason they kept it quiet is because there's sort of this unspoken rule in Canberra that you don't publicize the private lives of politicians. Now, this rule exists for various different reasons, but largely because a lot of politicians are cheating on their spouses because they live lifestyles that are completely contrary to what is honourable. And if the media starts sifting through their private lives, they're all going to look like a bunch of scumbags. I mean, Bill Shorten himself left his wife for a younger woman a few years ago. So this is not the first time this has happened. What is fascinating about this, even though the media have been hesitant to talk about this, now that they are, a lot of other stuff is coming to light. So Barnaby Joyce isn't just in trouble for cheating on his wife, which is bad enough, and as far as I'm concerned, that's a scummy move, and we can all agree on that. But look at what's happened since it's come out. So, to kind of cover up the affair, over the course of last year, his mistress was moved from job to job. It's possible some ethics and ethical boundaries have been crossed in doing this. It's possible they might need to change the legislation to create these ethical boundaries, to strengthen these ethical boundaries so it doesn't happen again. There's even been proposals now that politicians should not be allowed to have relationships with staffers because of the whole Me Too movement and abuse of power and all that sort of stuff. But what we've seen, and I think this is really illustrative for both Christians and non-Christians, is one of the reasons why adultery should be avoided is because when you get yourself in a situation where you're doing something which you clearly know is wrong, you don't want it to get out. You tend to do stupid things to make sure it doesn't get out and to make matters worse. So it looks like Barnaby Joyce might actually lose his job as the leader of the Nationals and as the Deputy Prime Minister because, one, cheating on his wife makes him, at least to some degree, especially among conservative people, political poison. But two, it looks like, and obviously I'm not in the know, I'm not a journalist, but it looks like, from what reports are saying, that Barnaby Joyce has done a lot of unethical things. So in other words, the reason why adultery should be avoided is because, one, we all know it's wrong. We all know it's wrong. You don't have to be a Christian to know it's wrong. There's a reason why non-Christians get married in such large numbers as well. It's because we believe in faithfulness, we believe in fidelity. But when we place ourselves in a stupid situation where we've done something like commit adultery, we create a whole bunch of complicated situations that we want to hide from people and cover up, and it causes us to do a lot of other stupid things, and those things end up getting you in trouble as well. In fact, those are the things which can get you in more trouble. Remember a few years ago, Bill Clinton, who's obviously a scumbag when it comes to women, had an affair with his intern, Monica Lewinsky, very famous. And this caused the Republicans to want to go after him, obviously because he's a Democrat president and because they believe this to be immoral. But what eventually got him in trouble and got him impeached was the fact that they got him on a technicality in an interview with an investigator, And because he lied to the investigator, or he misrepresented the truth, that is what they used to impeach him. In other words, if you go down this route of adultery, if you go down that road, you're going to get yourself in big trouble, and you're going to reap a whirlwind. And Barnaby Joyce, to illustrate to all of us the dangers of going down this path. Now, I'm actually a Barnaby Joyce fan. He was one of my favourite politicians. I love the fact that we have a country Aussie bloke who's a bit of a character, a bit uncouth, uses traditional Aussie language in the parliament. I don't like the idea of parliament being filled with inner city urban elites who always speak in clipped and polished tones and are afraid to use Aussie lingo. I love the fact that he gave no quarter to Johnny Depp when they tried to bring his dogs into the country illegally. I thought it was awesome the way Barnaby Joyce handled that situation. So I'm not putting this out there as someone who dislikes Barnaby Joyce. Obviously, I'm saddened by this, and you can't help but have less respect for a man who does this to his wife. But I think we can all learn from this. The truth is, anyone can make this mistake. Maybe not tomorrow, but maybe you'll make a decision tomorrow which places yourself in a situation with somebody which compromises your faithfulness to your spouse, and you find yourself in an adulterous situation which could have been avoided if you avoided that first decision which you made. Adultery doesn't just happen. You have to meditate on it. You have to think about it. You have to think about the other person and create situations where you can be alone and spend time with that person. But thirdly, I want to talk about this, and this is fascinating, because at the moment we've got this whole Me Too thing going on, which is a necessary movement. Abuse of people like Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey and other famous actors in Hollywood is terrible. It's disgusting. The things that women were made to do, and sometimes men were made to do to get roles. And the fact that Harvey Weinstein was raping people and abusing people and using his power to crush people's careers and do all sorts of crazy stuff. And this happens outside of Hollywood and in many different fields. Men across history have abused their power. And so I have no problem with aspects of the Me Too movement. But what I find so illustrative and fascinating, because I like to watch conservative news, I like to watch liberal news as well, I love to watch news across the spectrum, but I was listening to a particular news show, which I won't mention because I don't want to single them out, because I've heard this in other ones as well, but I was listening to it on a podcast actually, and their argument was, we should stay out of this, because this is a matter of two consenting adults. They're adults, they can choose what they want to do, therefore it's their issue, not ours, we shouldn't be talking about it. In a sense I understand that, because consent is incredibly important when it comes to sex. But this wasn't a situation between two adults. It was a situation between at least three. Barnaby Joyce, his mistress, and Barnaby Joyce's wife. And just because somebody consents to do something doesn't make it right. We've lost our bearings as a civilization when a conservative news anchor says that it's okay for the Deputy Prime Minister to consent to have sex with someone who's not his wife. It's not okay. It's not right. But I think it's illustrative of our culture that as long as there's consent, their idea is you can do anything you want. But the truth is you can't. And the fact that the Deputy Prime Minister of this country is in danger of losing his job as the Deputy Prime Minister and maybe his place in Parliament, he's probably going to lose his wife, he's probably going to have a strained relationship with his daughters. It's possible that his relationship with his mistress won't last because he's considerably older than her, and once he's no longer in power and no longer has the income and no longer has the influence, it'll be interesting to see what happens. What's interesting about this is, even though we say as a society people can do what they want as long as they consent, the truth is that our world doesn't work that way. And when we do certain behaviours which the Bible calls sinful, which most of us consider wrong even if we don't believe in the Bible, you wreak destruction and bring damage upon your own life. So I don't want to single him out, even though we're talking about his situation, because I want to say this again. We can all make this mistake, and many other people have made this mistake. Learn from this situation. Avoid placing yourself in a situation where you can compromise your fidelity to your marriage partner. And just because consent is there doesn't mean it's right. There are moral standards, and as much as we try to deny them, the fact that Barnaby Joyce's world is falling apart around him because of this is illustrative of the fact that just because we deny these moral standards exist doesn't mean they don't exist. They do exist, and they affect your lives when you go against them. Anyway, thanks for listening to Matrim's Mutterings. Catch you later.